Hello, folks. Thank you for hanging around for a Q&A. After a very beautiful screening, I was just saying to Ben, it's lovely to see it on a big screen. Having watched it on a laptop when we were programming the festival, it's really nice to see it kind of on a big screen with nice sound and in company as well. So that's always very nice. So Ben, this project, I know that you are a filmmaker who works across a lot of genres. So a couple of questions to kick off, I guess. So why documentary, and particularly why this documentary?
Do you want the creative answer or the practical answer?
Give us both.
So the practical answer, documentary, is I find it's easier than fiction. You can work in smaller crews, you can work with less kit, you're very reactive to the environment. But documentary, because I come from a very kind of politically active family and politically active friends, and I think that if you have the ability to ask questions about the world around you, this isn't the practical question. This is the creative question. You have to react to it. You have to ask a question about stuff, and doing this kind of thing and travelling isn't something that you don't get your thirst quenched by it. It actually makes you more thirsty. You go out and see these things and then suddenly you go, oh, I've missed something, I want to go back. So asking questions actually leads to more questions. So once you get your fingers and toes into documentary, you get dragged down. Oh, there's another story. Like the Gauchos at the end there, like there's documentaries in them alone. Like they're otherworldly, all of them. And this project, the practical reasons, because the producer Pierre asked me to do it. Pierre's, you see him quite a bit in it. I met Pierre in Mozambique in 2007, and he's an economist. And we always talked about doing films together, and we started making films about 2015. We did some in South Africa. He's South African. We did some in Colombia and Mexico and places, and then he went adventuring by himself probably over a decade ago, and ended up in this city in Argentina, down in Mendoza. He met his partner. He's now married to Mariana, who's also in it, and they have a child now. So he's lived there, and then he told me a story about this river that is dying. Basically, that's how he sold it to me. It's a dying river, and if the river dies, it's not like if the Avon went. I mean, it'd be awful, but we've got other rivers and it rains all the time here. But with San Rafael, if that river goes, there's no other water. It's not like, oh, we'll go to the other river, or we'll go to the reservoir, it'll rain all the time. It rains about 5 days a year. So if that goes, that's it. It's not So he sold to me like that, and we found a very tiny amount of money. And then we went out and shot it over. The trip was 43 days.
Wow.
And then, but we had a few breaks, a few hospital trips. And
I feel like we should ask more about the hospital trips.
Yeah. And so it was probably 3 months in all. Yeah.
Okay, great. And what was the biggest revelation you had whilst making the film, whilst you were out in Mendoza?
Revelation. I suppose. I don't know if it's revelation as such. Well, the fact that there's not actually that many dangerous things there. I was assuming that I was going to get eaten. It's not. They're scorpions, but apart from that, you're all right. That was quite a revelation when you're sleeping on the floor every night. But I think going into it and with your environmental glasses on, and then realising when talking to people that is itself a complex thing, and it can be quite an arrogant position to take sometimes. It's like that river means that so many people can live and thrive. So who will we say you can't use it, or use it like we say? So it becomes a very complex issue. I think that's the revelation that came out of that. All of them care about it, but they all care about it in slightly different ways that can conflict at times.
Okay, that's really interesting. Are there any questions out there, like burning questions that you want to ask? Wave at me and I will bring a microphone in your direction so everyone can hear. But yeah, just wave. I've got loads of questions, but if anybody has burning questions, give me a wave. No, maybe as we talk, something will come on. Yes, Christy.
I just wanted to know a little bit more about the music and the sound, which is such a big part of the film. Really brought it to life.
Oh yeah, so that's a composer friend of mine. He's from Coventry. He's a drummer primarily, and he makes his own drum kits, like weird looping things. But he leads an improviser. They are kind of improvisational, but not at the same time. We won't go into that. And I'd worked with him on a few projects before, live projects, and I asked him to do the soundtrack. But I took him some demos. I'm not a particularly good musician, but I can, when I get a sound, I want it to sound something like this. This is an outline. So that weird noise at the beginning, that's me singing into a microphone and then looping back. So I gave him these kind of demos, and then he just expanded it. But actually, when he expanded it so widely, I had to pare it down because he hadn't written a soundtrack before. And so there is an album, it's on Spotify, and the album on Spotify of it, the Atuel album, is quite different to that because it's a full band, where I had to take the stems and like take out bits and use bits of guitar or the drums or whatever a lot of the time. But it has been played live to the film. Yeah, we've done a few things like that. Yeah.
Name checking. What's his name?
G. Vaughan.
G. Vaughan.
Yeah, he's fantastic.
Amazing. Just wave at any point if you've got a question, and I'll cut away from my list of questions and come to you. But this may be where you talk about hospital trips, but can you tell us about some of the challenges that you faced in the filmmaking process? Because I would imagine...
The filmmaking or the actual just being like trying to survive?
Let's go filmmaking challenges, and then we'll go survival after. Okay. You can go Bear Grylls afterwards.
Minimal amount. So the kind of amount of number, the crew number kind of fluctuated throughout the trip. The smallest it was 2. That was me and the producer. That was the journey through the canyon. That was the walk. We couldn't have done it with any more people. It's just too difficult. And the biggest was 5, 6. So 6. Sorry. So I mean that's small. I mean if you've made a film, that's a tiny amount. So just carrying batteries. The longest we were away from electricity was 2 weeks. And if anyone's going to, well, not get techie, but the cameras we used chew up batteries, and space. So we shot that, 6 hours of footage I shot for that, and it was about 8 terabytes of footage. So just storing that stuff, and then you can't back it up for 2 weeks. So if you lose it, or it gets wet, or gets too hot, or too cold, or a horse stands on it, you've lost, and you can't just go back. So like the simple things were difficult to filmmaking wise, and shooting in water, but the water's not the problem; it's the dust. Yeah, and you can't clean it in the evening. You just have to just keep it safe. It fell in the cameras. We took 2 cameras. They fell in the capsized boat. It went in with the capsized boat, and I dropped it once. Yeah, I was very tired.
And what about survival then?
I mean, I make it sound more dramatic than it was. We were the first people to do the trip. Well, they said since 1884, but the people who did it in 1884 did it on the bank with horses. And that was before the dams and stuff. So we were the first people to do it by river. So I had to, well, the producer had to, because he lives there, had to do a lot of groundwork to figure out how you do it. So for the first section in the Andes, we had a support vehicle. You have to. I mean, it was driving along, because you can't take the kit in the boat. It's just too heavy for those. And that section, the rapid section, no matter how hard I tried, I can't make it as terrifying as it actually was. So the red boat, and you see in the thing, that red boat was me. And it is, because nothing you can do. It's quite simply that because there was water in the boat, it couldn't flip us. So it was actually being half in the water saved us from being flipped in that water. So that was the only time I thought, yeah, we could have died here, lads. It was terrifying how the water was. And then there was the fire, which actually seemed terrifying at the time, but retrospect wasn't too frightening. It is, I don't know if you've ever been in a bushfire, but it is, the soles of my shoes melted shooting it. But it's not as bad. And then there's like falling out the boat, my knee, cracked my knee. The injury on the gaucho was really bad. He tore his calf off, coming off his horse and then spiking it. So there was things like that, and the scorpions, and heat, just the heat all the time, and getting fresh water. So we took filters with us, which can take hours to filter the water through properly. So we were drinking river water for most of it, things like that. So,
wow. Just thinking a little bit about the environmental aspects of the film.
yes.
What parallels do you see between what's happening in Argentina and what's happening here in the UK with rivers and the environment more generally?
Well, I mean, it was Pierre who. So the narration is a combination of myself, Pierre's, and Mariana's diaries on our way down. We just combined them to create a character out of that. But that line, there's a line in it which Pierre actually came up with. Actually, one of the reasons he told me this before. He talked about the world being an oasis, and the fact is that if you think of the world as the river, and then the desert as the universe, it becomes quite clear that we rely on this. And once this is gone, there's nothing else. There's nothing else you can do about it. And it sounds simplistic, but it's true. So I think that there is obviously a comparison to rivers here, but it's a universal thing. That is, I mean, we all use rivers in the same way, just because they're in the desert, the other side of the Atlantic, doesn't make it any different. I'm doing a project now on the Sherborne, which runs through Coventry, and there are lots of similarities between the two. The saddest similarity, I suppose, is the fact that both of them seem invisible to people. You know, they just do not know they're there, and they don't know how much use. Obviously, there's a lot more kind of use from that river because we have different ways. But the reason Coventry is there is because of the river. It had 12 or 14 mills on it. So the whole existence of the place that people live in is based upon the water. But I mean, to the point then, in Coventry, we've buried it. It's under the city. So for all the scientific reasons or the agricultural reasons, whatever, economic reasons, the comparison is like just that general disconnection between the reason we're there in the first place. I found very strange.
Any questions from out there? Oh, yes. Oh, got a couple. I'll come to you first.
I was just interested in how long the journey took.
Sorry?
I was interested in how long the journey took. How long were you in?
It was
end to end.
End to end was 43 days.
And how long? How many miles or kilometers were you traveling?
I think it's about 400 kilometres.
Okay.
We walked the first. It was about 6 days walk at the beginning because you can't take the river because it destroy you, and then there was the bit in the canyon which was 2 days. The rest was on the boats. Yeah.
You mentioned being a bit wary of making a strong political point when other people have different uses of the river or relationships with the river. Have you got a strong sense of how people local to the river receive the film?
Yeah, well, interestingly enough, there was it's a bigger issue we discussed bringing up in the film. There's strict mining laws in Mendoza, the state, basically their county, which other states don't have, and they're trying to change those laws. So there's other states which don't have the same mining laws, and they now have to ship water in to give to people because the water's been poisoned, and because of the limitations of water there, that it's so much easier in Mendoza. So they're trying to change these laws. So there was actually big protests, very, very. They protest better than us. They're like the French. They're really good at it. And so there was a lot of protest before we went about the changes in the law, and we discussed whether to use them or not. And because there's ongoing, well, two reasons. Firstly, there's ongoing court cases and other legal things going on, and we could barely afford to shoot the film, let alone go into litigation with them. And the other thing is, and actually we got in a bit of trouble with the mining companies, but they were quite annoyed with us because we didn't mention them, and therefore they can't. We basically showed why the rivers should be protected, but we didn't mention the mines. So they were like, they had no reason to have a go at us. So all these protests, and a lot of the protesters used the film and showed the film and see this is what we've got. But at no point does it mention or attack the mines. So they were annoyed because they had nothing to attack back with, which I'd like to say was some kind of genius, but we just were afraid of getting sued. But it's an ongoing thing, especially with the new leadership in Argentina. He likes money, and so that's the problem. But the local people have used it a lot for showing stuff, especially the indigenous. So Niho, the indigenous guy, has been using it a lot for protection of the river and the rights.
Great, thank you. Anybody else while I'm down here?
I'm right in thinking you didn't actually show very much, if any, of the major conurbation which was making use of the film, making use of the water use.
Sorry, say again?
There was a fairly large conurbation somewhere nearby, which was having the canal water taken
Yeah,
to San Rafael.
Yeah, we didn't shoot because the river actually doesn't actually. So it comes up through the Andes and then loops down under. So San Rafael is about 400,000 people. It's a big place, and it goes to the south and doesn't go through the city. But what they do is they take the canal and then they divert it into the city.
Was that a deliberate choice not to show?
Well, the river, because we were
you
sticking to the river, and that was our goal. That we didn't go the other way. And there was some sections.
Sort of threat in the background.
Yeah, it's a really nice. It's a beautiful city. And there were sections we went through. It got far more not industrial, but there were far more houses and whatnot. But then you start shooting people, and that becomes more complicated.
Shooting people film-wise, not
Both, it depends, really.
Oh, yes, sir. Going to get fit.
Thanks. It was all about drought, I believe.
Sorry?
It was mainly about the drought effects of losing the river.
Yeah.
But do they not have the other extremes of, torrential rains as well?
It doesn't rain there.
It doesn't.
It just doesn't rain. It just it has hail. I mean, and the problem with the hail isn't the water. The problem with the hail is the hail kills people. That was a small hailstorm, and they were like that. So we had to get into cover. A couple of them hit my legs, and I had bruises for a week after. But they go to the size of like oranges, grapefruits. So, but apart from that, it rains like 3 days a year. It's just there's just no rain. Is
erosion a big issue?
No, I couldn't really comment because I don't know much about. But I think down into the desert areas, it isn't so much a problem because nobody uses it for anything. It's used for grazing, but you can't graze large amounts of animals upon that. So it's lots of goats. It is just mainly drought stuff. And it was interesting that the gauchos said they knew there was a drought. They knew there was the climate changed when there was more water because things were melting quicker. So they'd get an extreme amount of water and then suddenly there's just nothing for the rest of the year and it just gets swept down. I suppose there'll be more erosion problems now because of that sudden glacial melt off and then there's the after. But it's interesting that all these people are frontline climate. They're absolutely on the front line, but they can see it. They're smart people. They know what's going on.
Thank you very much.
Hi Ben, how did you manage for food then if there's 5 of you and it took that long a time? Just carrying, What did you
We
eat?
just carried it. We just all dried stuff. It was just dried in. So we had the main bit of the journey was 2 boats. I was in one by myself, and then the other 2 were in that one. And we carried tents, and the camera was the heaviest bit. But then we were really strict about what we could eat. But the furthest we were away from a road was about 80 kilometres. That was the furthest away. It sounds a long way, but it's not. That's such a small. If you got the boat 10 kilometres down, you're suddenly 10 kilometres towards the road. So there's never any point I felt like we were going to starve to death. Even up in the Andes, like the gauchos had food. They had goats. They would have just eaten. We did eat goat a lot. But it was dried food, porridge, lots and lots of porridge. Oh my God, so much porridge. And then like those packets of things you put water in the evenings, and then fruit, lots of fruit. There is some fruit you can get. You can pick grapes occasionally around the place and stuff. And so, yeah.
Great. I've got a couple more questions. Oh,
There was just a comment in the film that resonated with me and sort of struck a parallel between Argentina and the UK.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the line was something like, we take from the river, but we don't understand it. And I think we feel the rivers are under threat here. They're polluted, and we're trying to understand the chemical makeup of the water, how it got that way, what's living in the river. And I don't think these issues were uppermost in people's minds very much previously, because I didn't learn anything about this at school, for example, but now I'm quite interested in invertebrates and things like that at the bottom of the river bed. So in Argentina, does this threat mean that people are appreciating rivers more and trying to learn more and protesting, as you say?
I mean, from my limited experience of it, I guess so. I think, it does help that it's so much more of an outdoor culture, which we don't have as much for various reasons. Wouldn't want to just say it's just the weather. So they're a lot more engaged. You can spend longer. Like the section there's a section where you saw lots of people swimming, and it's like that all the time. People are spending time by it, and I think that they see things change. And maybe one of the issues here is we don't spend any time in nature for working hours or for land rights or various other things. And I know the weather as well doesn't help, but we can spend our time next to the river or nature in different ways, can't we? It's just as, there are parts of England and the UK that are just as beautiful as that. And spending more time in them would probably allow people to be more involved in protecting them, because you care about things don't you? So, yeah.
great. Thank you.
I might have missed it, but when did you make the film?
It's ongoing. Like, if anybody made a film, so, I got the last flight out of Argentina before COVID. We got out of the mountains and turned our phones on, and the calls started coming in saying leave now. So it was 20. When was COVID a thing? 2020. Yeah, so February 2020, January 2020, I got the emergency last flight out. So it was straight from that straight into lockdown. So that was a juxtaposition. And then I spent 18 months editing it. My Spanish isn't great, so.
Did they have COVID too?
Yeah. But because they're I don't think it was this bad there, because that quite literally it's 3 or 4 hours drive to anywhere else. So yeah, but they are a lot more hands-on in Argentina, so it probably got caught a lot quicker. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you for all your amazing questions. I've just got a couple more. One would be, what advice would you give to other filmmakers?
What, making documentaries or?
Yeah. If they wanted to make a documentary.
Making a documentary is I don't know. I really don't know. Because I watch that and I see so many things I change now and do differently, and I think it's too slow at points. But then I think the ending's still very effective. Like that last 10 minutes when it creeps up on you, and actually that the guy at the end saying we have no future. It was really, in my head, I would have spent more time with him and talked to him more. And we did go to his house and spend some time, but it didn't really fit in the end. So I think maybe it's like finding the story. The story is more important than anything else. Errol Morris, the great documentary filmmaker, said, I like to interview people for 24 hours and then I start the real interview, which makes you think like spending time with people is the best thing you can do. Don't worry about cameras, don't worry about all this. Just spend time with people and the story will be there. If the story isn't there, then choose something else to do. But from that, we've got, there's so many stories that came out of that. We'll probably go back and do something else at some point. But yeah, spend time with people, talk to people, and talk to them, I suppose as well, it's like talk to them honestly. I think it's like, so people like to be listened to and heard, and especially people who have previously not had that opportunity, and listen to them and don't judge them and give them the time to speak.
Amazing. Other than the River Sherborne project, what's next?
I am. What am I doing? What am I doing, Brian? Yeah, no, I'm going to Brian's for dinner. Yeah, I think that's probably a bigger project than the 43 days down the river. To be honest. We're setting up lots of creative teaching courses, filmmaking courses. We're running filmmaking courses in Coventry at the moment. I'm off to Rome in October to finish an edit from a film there. I've been working with an Argentine director, actually, again, completely separate, no connection whatsoever. He's an Argentine director, and we're working on a film for a while, so I'm finishing an edit there. It's a documentary about musicians, and yeah.
Going to Brian's for dinner?
Going to Brian's for dinner, yeah, that's what I'm doing, yeah.
Great. Thank you so much, Ben.
No,
it's been amazing to talk to you. Can we give Ben a big round of applause, both for this evening and for the film?
Thank you very much.